welcome to another episode of The Grapevine. I'm Susie.
I'm Mary.
And today we're not in our usual studio and we're not on set. We're here at St. Stephen's Retreat Center in Titusville, Florida. And the reason why we're here is because we're getting ready to talk to a great guest who's going to help us on a tough subject that many Middle Eastern and Egyptian parents go through, and even American parents, but definitely very tough in our culture. Today's topic is, when should we talk to our children about sex? So, Mary, it's a tough subject. It's taboo, but I think that based on some of the episodes that we've done before and some of the feedback we've received from our viewers, their parents aren't really talking to them about it. So we decided to do some research and get a great guest and
try to keep our faces from turning completely red and dive in.
And get ready for those viewers to write a million comments, negative and positive, hopefully, on what we're going to discuss today.
Yeah.
So I'll start. Let me ask you a question. At what age did you learn about sex, about the birds and the bees?
That's actually a tough question. I don't think I can pinpoint an exact age. I feel I have older siblings, and she had older friends, so I feel like just kind of as growing up, I heard a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit from school, a little bit from older sibling, some from church, a little bit from my parents. I don't think my parents really talked to me until I was actually much older, probably older than I should have been. But my overall, I think, impression, and this may be, I don't know if this is, growing up in the Coptic church or being Middle Eastern or what, but it was always like this impression of like sex is something that you don't talk about. It's something that's very inappropriate until you get married.
Right.
But then there was no and then that's it. And then you get married one day, and then it's like, okay,
the switch turns.
You're supposed to just
have at it.
It's like not bad anymore. So having that switch it can be very difficult.
Right.
Especially for girls, I think.
I think
more so than men.
Right.
How about you?
Well, I can remember I was I think I was 9. I was in 4th grade. And I learned from my brother, who had learned from his friends.
He's your older brother?
My older brother. He was 11 months older. And I think his friends, it was either from school or from around the block, they taught it to him. And I don't know if they used a magazine or what, but he came home and he told me about it. And I didn't know what he was talking about. I was like, that's not true. And he's like, no, this is how babies come and everything. And he was pretty detailed. So I learned about it really young, and it wasn't from my parents.
What was your reaction? That's not true.
I always pictured the stork. So.
Oh yeah.
I was like, no, it doesn't just come to the front door or something when mom and dad are ready. And he's like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Or he's like, this is how it is. So it was a shock. But then I started to hear it from my peers at school. When I was in the 4th grade, they were talking about it.
So for me, because I went in preparing this episode, I was really doing a lot of self-reflection.
Right.
And I realized that, growing up in church, I knew about St. Mary, and from, being a toddler, I knew St. Mary the Virgin, and St. Mary was a virgin when she had Jesus. So even before I knew what sex was, I knew that St. Mary was a virgin and she had a baby, not the same way that everybody else has a baby. So for some reason, I think I also equated that to St. Mary's very holy, and this is the way you should have a baby, and everybody else is doing it wrong, or something. So then then coming to the realization that no, the way that mom and dad had us is not wrong. That also was kind of mind blowing.
Right. I don't think I understood the word virgin when they would tell us, oh, St. Mary was a virgin. You just hear virgin okay, it's the same thing with our kids. When we talk to our kids, we're like, St. Mary the Virgin, Virgin Mary. I don't think they understand the word virgin. They probably think it's a first name or a last name or something. They don't even understand what that means at all until, now they do. We talk to our older kids about that, but definitely not. So I know you have young kids. They're only 3.
They're 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
So
you're definitely not.
We haven't had the talk yet. But in doing research, I'm learning that, originally, before I had kids, this topic never even crossed my mind of when am I going to talk to my kids about it. And I think I just always assumed that that was like a teenager topic or like, you know, a puberty topic. But I'm learning more and more that no, like that needs to start way earlier than I thought I was supposed to start. So you were telling me that,
I was saying that we did it with our kids. And the reason why we did is because
and how old are your kids?
We did it with two of our kids out of we have four, but our two older ones are 9 and 7. But we did it about a year and a half, so one of them was going to be 8 and the other one was 6. So it was October of 2015 that we did it with them. And the reason why is because I came across this book called The Talk, 7 Lessons to Introduce Your Child to Biblical Sexuality. It's by Luke Gilkerson, and it's from ages 5 to 10. And I came across this book accidentally. We were preparing a retreat for our middle school girls when I was serving with the middle school, and we were coming here to St. Stephen's Retreat Center, and it was called, we were doing Passport to Purity by Dennis Rainey and Barbara Rainey. And when I was doing research on it, and I was listening to the CDs, and I was looking at reviews, I came across the book that's for a younger group, because the one for Dennis Rainey is for preteens, about 10, 11, 12, I think possibly up to 13. And I was like, oh, this is an interesting book. Maybe, you know, I might purchase it or something. And then one day my daughter came home from school and she was telling me what they were talking about in the schoolyard. And she didn't learn about sex, but just what she was saying, like, oh, my friend said she's going to marry, I forgot what singer it was. She's going to marry him and have his baby. And I was like, okay, that's the beginning. I've got to have the talk with her. So I went and I bought this book, and it's such a thin book. It's about 20 pages. I wish we had the copy right now. I actually loaned it to a friend. And I read the book, and it's like 15 minutes of reading, but you'd go kind of like sit with them for 15 minutes a day and kind of do like different parts of, like, you're talking about the anatomy of a male and a female, and then the second day you actually talk about how a male and female are having sex, and then it goes on each day, and it goes even to the part where, you know, when someone touches you. So it goes through everything, and I thought this is such a great book. And every night we would reiterate to the girls, we're like, what we're teaching you, we don't want you to go and tell the kids at school, because it's going to take away from what their parents want to teach them. Their parents probably want to teach them. But we're teaching you because if someone tries to give you the wrong information, and kids your age are going to, then you could just say, well, my mom and dad already talked to me, so I already know everything.
You don't want your kids to be the one running around the schoolyard, you know, passing telling everybody else. Yeah.
Passing even the right information. I was just like, it's not your job to do it, it's their parents, and their parents are going to be really upset if you do it. So we definitely did that, and it turned out really great. And we talked, as I was preparing for this show, we've been talking to them, like, do you guys remember our conversation? And we bring it up whenever we watch shows, and I'm like, you know, this show's kind of inappropriate. Why do you think it is? You know, maybe you shouldn't watch it. Why do you think this is an inappropriate show? And they'll remember our conversation and what we did for that week. It's like a 7-day lesson, and it was really great. It was very helpful, and I definitely recommend it. I think I've actually posted on Facebook, like on some of the Coptic group pages for like Coptic moms and dads. I'm like, this is a really good book if you're interested. So I definitely enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I want to check out.
So we're going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we're going to visit with our guest and ask him when is the best time to talk to our children about sex, what we should say to them, and what we should hope they would say to us. So stick around, and we'll be right back. Hey, we're back, and like I said before, we are in Titusville. So if you see anyone walking behind us, it's because the Tezbeh is going on. So it's really nice to hear while we're filming. It's actually very beautiful to hear the praises while we're filming. But we are back with our guest, and our guest, if you don't recognize him, his name is Dr. Hani Ashamalla, and he is a servant in St. Mary and St. Antonio's Coptic Orthodox Church in Queens, New York. It's actually my first church, and I was baptized by the Abuna there, Abuna Henna. And we're so very happy for you to come and be with us. And we recognize, if you recognize him also, you might recognize him from many shows from CYC, including Closing the Gap, which I'm a big fan of as well. Thank you, and welcome to our show, The Grapevine, Dr. Hani.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. Well, we were discussing about when should parents talk to children about sex, and we know it's a pretty taboo subject for Middle Easterners, Egyptians, our culture, and even some American parents, but definitely our culture. And we actually came across one of your videos that you on YouTube that we saw from 2012. I think you were visiting a church in East Brunswick. I forgot what church it was. I think St. Mary's. And you gave a really great talk and presentation about this subject. So we're so happy to come here in St. Stephen's Retreat Center and catch you and ask you some questions about the subject.
Happy to be here.
So our first question, actually, we were discussing it before, is when is the right age to start talking about sex with our children?
Right. So it's very difficult, especially for a Middle Eastern parent. And I kind of glimpsed what you guys are talking about, and I was very proud of both of you. Both of you were ready to speak to your kids. I know yours are a bit young, but you already have done a great job. So the best answer is you start as early as possible. And I like to start at the age between 3 and 5. Then every phase in their life, you add something. As you said, your daughter now is 9, you added a few other things and so on. Okay, there are people even think that 3 years is a little young, which may be true, but the only thing I would say between 3 and 5 is look at the flower and look at the butterfly. The butterfly comes on this flower, picks up an egg, put it in the other rose or the other plant, and then a different flower will come because an egg from here on another sort of cell from the other one bring another one. And you can bring it as there is a seed from dad, is placed on a seed on mom, and brings a baby. And I think that's easy, no technicalities, no specifics. People think, what are we going to say at 5 years old? And later on, you can add few things.
Good, good. So from 3 to 5, I never even thought to begin at 3, but I mean, it makes sense. Obviously, we're not giving them so many details at that age.
And you know what? This is some of their nature. They are seeing the fish. They are seeing the birds. They are seeing the flowers. They are seeing the butterflies. So use something from their nature. And there are even nice books as the one that you mentioned in your intro that can probably have something like that.
So that's for you, Mary.
Yeah.
You've got a 3-year-old.
Yeah,
start talking about those flowers.
Yeah. Now, if you want to go through other phases, then the next phase will be, say, 7 to 9 or so. And this is the time, it's very important in today's age, that you talk to your children, don't let anyone touch you. Mom or dad may bathe you, but outside home, no one should touch you, regardless of whoever that is, a cousin, a friend, school teacher, maybe a doctor, or a mom or a dad, but very clear, I want the boy and the girl from the age of 7 onwards, because unfortunately this happens a lot. It happens in schools and happens outside schools. Maybe teachers, maybe other people, maybe unfortunately somebody visiting from a different country, spending a night. So it's very important you tell him your body should not be touched and you need to be careful. And if anyone touch you in a way that you don't like, you need to come and tell mommy. And I would not ask for more than that. Just as soon as you hit from 9 to 13, 9 to 13 is the age that you must speak to your girls about the menstrual period. And for boys, I would speak about, you don't have boys
I
either.
do.
Oh, great.
I have one
So
of each.
from 9 to 13, I would say for boys, I would start speaking about their growth. Because there will be a lot of, all of a sudden, his muscles, there will be a little hair, there may be a voice change.
Big changes.
So all the big changes, and it can be shocking if dad doesn't speak. And usually I like, if possible, dad speak to his son and mommy speaks to her daughter. So the girls also will have some budding of her breasts, maybe a little hair. But the most important thing, no one should have a daughter that have her menstrual period as a shock to her. I mean, this is, to me, could be called a crime. Because you can't imagine how difficult that is for a girl to find blood or to even hear it from somebody else.
Right.
Especially that there is a lot of wrong teachings about menstrual period. there are people even within our, unfortunately, Coptic church where they may teach, oh, you are forbidden to go to communion. And all of a sudden the girl will say, oh, what did I do? I mean, I am just naturally like that. So I want you to say, I'm like you. My body was growing like you. This is a normal thing. And this is where you can start saying, there will be one day a small cell from dad goes to a small cell inside mom's tummy, and mom's tummy is here, and inside it there is a womb, there is a uterus, and you can start explaining the anatomy to your daughter. And you tell her that the uterus is a little small thing, but it's going to grow, and one day is going to be as big as to take a whole baby in. And during this time, you will not have a period. So you are now in a training time. Your body is training itself. It's almost like a factory. You can't make the factory bring the best product one day. So it makes a lot of training because one day it's going to have a real baby inside. Don't you think you need a lot of training for this? So they calm down and they know this is not a curse from God.
Right.
And if they see their brother or other friends, deacons going in and every day and no problem, and just tell her the church doesn't want you to be so tired, and you maybe have some pain. Mom may give you a little pill because you have pain, so you can sit down. You can eat something in the morning, so you don't have to have communion. So let us avoid the
technicalities.
and avoid also making it sound you are defiled, you are dirty, you are sinful,
impure.
Because none of these are true.
Right.
None of these are true. I'm not sure if you have any questions about that or.
I know when I was in 4th grade, my school, that was the first exposure. It wasn't sex education, but I remember being in 4th grade, all the girls went to one room, all the boys went to another room, and that the school actually taught us about our period for the girls. And I don't know what they taught to the boys, but I'm assuming, basically the puberty talk.
Right.
So.
Is that a private school?
No.
No?
Public.
Oh, they didn't do it in ours. Interesting.
So
and they gave us, we all went home with a gift bag, and there was deodorant in it. I remember that was, because I think they were saying that's around the time that you need to start wearing deodorant. And for the girls, there were, I think, pads in it. I don't know what the boys got. Deodorant.
Let's hope so.
Yes. They do need it.
So actually speaking about health ed, because every school now has a curriculum and every state has a curriculum. And I sort of went through many of those. And a lot of them are okay, but they concentrate or focus on maybe 3 or 4 main topics. The first one is abstinence. And they try to teach kids to avoid sex, not because of purity or chastity or any of the things we want to talk about. The second topic is speaking about sexually transmitted diseases and HIV and gonorrhea and other things, and how bad that can affect their fertility in the future. But what I noticed, and I think these are probably in the last 3 years, that they start adding a topic about the constituents of a family. And they say it doesn't have to be always a mom and a dad. It could be 2 dads, it could be 2 moms. And I think that's very important from the age of 7 to 9. We need to teach our children and refocus their attention every phase that the correct family in the concept of God is mom and dad, is a man and a woman. And bring the gospel, bring Genesis, bring the family of Christ himself and many other holy families. Because unfortunately we are getting into, especially in the Western world, we're getting into a vagueness of what a family is composed of.
Right.
So there will be in your children, certainly in yours, in the next 10 years, a lot of their peers who have 2 dads or 2 moms.
Yeah, right.
And they may question that.
Yeah,
and we
something that we never had encountered.
We never saw that when we were
Correct.
young. I actually see it now in my children's
Oh, you already
school.
start seeing it.
Yeah, I saw that there's 2 fathers and there's, I guess they're adopted sons. I don't even really know the story, but there's not a mom, it's 2 men.
Yeah.
I don't think the kids have noticed it, but I did. And
Yeah.
so they haven't said anything on that.
Yeah, so I think this is coming in the health education class. So we don't want, and I always like to say that, don't let your child learn anything new, not first from you.
Right.
I mean, it's a shame that we're letting our children to learn, for example, that a mom and a dad is the right family before you already have opened the topic at home or certainly in church. We don't have to condemn people,
Right.
but we need to state what the Bible is telling us about the correct family composition in the concept, in the mind of God. So where did we leave it? 7 to 9?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So 7 to 9 is the puberty talk, menstrual period talk, and I hope I explained, hopefully in the most non-threatening way, how to teach your child that this is not a punishment of God. This is a preparedness for the major miracle that will happen, that one day you will be carrying a saint that will go to the kingdom of God. Will be a baby like Demiana or Abanub will be inside you. Isn't that good cost for you to have a period every month for the next 10 years? Probably true. No man can have that, and you can give her the pride and the honor of that she is going to be like Saint Mary, carrying a saint that can go to heaven. Once you get to the time of the 13 to 15, this is where you start talking clearly about sex organs, and a man should talk to a man and a woman should talk to a woman, her daughter, speaking in clear details about the purity. And the subject I found from my own experience and others, it's very important to bring the altar in your discussion. Rather than speaking about a male organ penetrating a female organ, it's not easy and technicalities are not as important. And they get it from all the science classes. I like them to understand that their body is an altar and a place of God's dwelling and where the Holy Spirit dwells. And once they have that, they will take it all through the next, who knows what, 20, 30 years. Because I want them to live purity, not only while their puberty years, but I want them in their youth and their premarital and during marriage and after marriage and everything. So you can tell them that God created the genital organs between our legs because they are so important and they need to be hidden, like as the altar is hidden and covered. You don't ever go to the altar and find it not covered, it's always covered. And not anyone can uncover it, and not anyone can touch it, and not any time can be entered, and you always simulate to the holiness.
That's really nice.
That's really beautiful.
So instead of it being, because I think we tend to look at it more of it's shameful, like
That's
it's dirty, it's shameful, that's why
Right.
we cover it. It's something
Right.
to be embarrassed about, not that it's something that needs to be
So
protected.
special and yeah. I like that. That's very beautiful.
Yeah.
When I speak to daughters who are in high school or girls in high school, and usually I find it's more shame than anything, because unfortunately moms have told them haram and aib and maybe even worse than that. And when I start talking in a very benign, joyful way, because I like very much to remind my kids, St. Augustine said something that I like parents to always say before they start. Because if you start speaking about a topic and you are very shy, or you make it funny, or you dismiss it, you lose their attention or they don't respect it. You must be so respectful to what you're speaking about. And I always like to start by this saying, St. Augustine said, how can we be ashamed of organs God was not ashamed to create?
Right.
So once you start with this, you already shifted their mind completely from all the media with all respect, rubbish, to the holiness of the altar, to the hand of God designing that organ in the most amazing way. And one day, this organ will be helping God to create.
Yeah.
I always play this game with the kids. I always tell them, God the Almighty, who is capable of everything, there is one thing He cannot do. Everybody said, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, so the only thing God cannot do anymore is to create using dust and spit. He stopped doing that.
Right.
He's waiting for a woman who loves the man, go under the hands of the priest and overshadowed by the Holy Spirit, uniting them as one body. And when they are one body, the intimacy of sex is not unholy, but rather it's a very holy relation. And St. Paul wrote in his chapter 13 of Hebrews that the marital bed is undefiled. All of this should be discussed with the kids of 13 to 15.
Right.
Because they need to know the relation between mom and dad is holy. Sex in marriage is not just a license because they took a certificate so they can have sex, but whatever sex. No, it's completely different. This is sanctified by God. We are co-helping, if that's theologically correct, which is not, to help Him create a soul by procreation, which this person can inherit the kingdom of God. So this is the 13 and 15, and this is the friendship, which you started very well, and I'm sure you will have no problem dealing with that age.
Can I ask you, kind of going back to the younger ages, and we're talking about, sexual organs and so on and so forth, what is your opinion on the terms that you use with your kids, especially the young toddlers? Like, I know it's very common for parents to tell their kids, oh, that's your pee-pee, or, not use correct
and it's probably not wrong to give it scientific terms. Right. This is the age that you can call it any title in your family that you are familiar with. And as long as you are always, when they ask you, where did I come from? Because that's a question will be asked at the 5 years old. And you start bringing the butterfly on this. And you say, a seed from daddy came to a seed of mommy, and then you came from me. And you don't have to be technical. You don't have to go through the anatomy of the vagina and the penis. And that's not important at that age. And neither that they care to hear it either. So the terminology, I would rather stick to what the families like to use. And there is no need to be anatomically specific. They will never go back and say, oh, you told me. No, it doesn't matter.
Or even when, like you were saying, only you don't ever let anybody touch you.
Right. Okay.
In that sense.
So that's a very good question.
I think I usually use the regular words, like what they are, where
like
they
right now,
hear vagina and I say it.
So right now, I just say private parts.
Yeah.
Just because my daughter is 3 and I don't want her to go to preschool and start yelling out these.
Well, that's what happened with our kids, with my dad. And they were like, we were told Giddu vagina, and he got very angry with us. I was like, Giddu's very old school.
So I like to use anything covered by the bathing suit is private.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's a good idea.
It's safe.
I'll do that for the audience.
It's anatomically clear. For a girl is known, for a boy is known, and they will not ask questions. Darling, whatever is covered by the bathing suit is your private.
Okay.
Nobody should touch that except mommy when she's bathing you. Enough, easy, no questions to be wondered or being more technical than that. You can be technical later when they become 9 and they want to know anatomy, and you can show in a figure. I don't like the videos and all of that, but you can use one of those caricature kind of figure, how the uterus looks like, the ovaries, the tubes, the testicles, all of that can be used. Where do you want to go from here?
Well, before we end the show, before we end this part of the show, I actually have one question. I don't know if it's going to be a long answer, but when have we waited too long to have this discussion? Because we know in our culture, some of the parents are leaving it up to the church, and some of them are leaving it up to school. So when are we waiting too long to have? If we haven't started at 3 or 5 or 7 and 9, when have we waited too long? When is it too late?
Whoever is listening should start. He's already late.
Right.
But I fully understand some parents who may be newcomers to the land and they are not ready to speak this because they were not given any preparedness to speak about it. I want them to be aware that their children are already seeing, not just hearing, they are seeing videos. And some of them may even have already seen porn movies, which we need to talk about.
Yes.
And if you don't speak, they are getting their knowledge from completely different source that you may not like, and unfortunately you may not unwind. And once the memory becomes stored in this amazing computer, it's very hard to delete.
Right.
So if you, under no circumstances, cannot open your mouth and teach your children, then you must bring a servant, a Sunday school teacher, another uncle or aunt or a priest or somebody. A lot of churches now are doing sex education classes, I'm aware of. There is also, interestingly, a couple of months ago, Abuna Luca Stefanos, who is psychiatrist by training, published a very nice book called Puberty. And he is the priest in San Marcorius in Belleville, New Jersey, and the book can be ordered through their church. And I read the book. It's very well done. A lot of work was done in it by a committee with him and also led by Dr. Margot Resk, a psychologist from Pittsburgh. And basically, they took every stage and they put a lesson. What do you actually say?
Oh, great.
So they went in depth more than what I'm just saying now.
Well, to check that out,
Yeah, that's really good. Well, if you like this show and you like this topic, stick around because we're coming back with Dr. Hani next week. So stick around and enjoy it. And thank you for watching The Grapevine.